Hindi is very bad. My Marathi is non-existent. So I'm very sorry, but I'll have to continue this in English. We have to play off our own strengths that we have after all. So I'm Abhijeet Chanda. I stay in Delhi. I've got a podcast called the Rationable Podcast. I've got a YouTube channel called Rationable, simply. And I have a website called berationable.com. And rationable is basically being rational and reasonable at the same time. So I wanted to talk about critical thinking because that is where I've originally come from. I have never been a very religious person. I've been brought up in a very liberal household, thank God. Thank God. And it's been very, so my parents never forced any belief on me, even though they are from the Brahmo Samaj, which is a reformist Hindu sect. So I have never had any real fight with God, so to speak. But I have been thinking about how I can be a better critical thinker. And I thought I'd just share a couple of thoughts. So I've got 5 points, which I'll try and convey in 5 minutes and see how far I get before Sukrit throws me off stage. All right. So the first thing which we all have to do to be better critical thinkers is we have to think about how we think, not about how other people are thinking. We have to think about how we are thinking. We have to be aware of the cognitive biases that we have. We all have cognitive biases. You can say that people like skeptics, rationalists have a bias towards science or a bias towards religion, religion being bad or having some cognitive biases. But we have to be aware of what our cognitive biases are and try and minimize that as much as possible. And only by being aware of our cognitive biases can we do that. So I was speaking to a person called Pranav Radhakrishnan, who's got a channel on YouTube called Science is Dope. You have to watch it. He's done an amazing takedown of Sadhguru and of Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and several other people. And he's doing some amazing work. So look for Science is Dope on YouTube. Science is Dope. D-O-P-E. D-O-P-E. So I was in my conversation with him, he said a very interesting thing. He said, when you are aware of your cognitive biases, you will make less mistakes about the subject that you're talking about. And if somebody says you also are biased towards science, you are also biased towards atheism, you can say, fine, don't listen to me. Listen to the evidence. The evidence will speak for itself. You don't have to believe me, you don't have to believe my opponent, but believe in evidence, which is the most important thing. Why is there no God? We're not saying there is no God. We are saying there is no evidence that there is a God. We are reserving our belief until we have evidence to believe it. Until then, we don't believe it. Simple. We're not claiming that there is no God. That is the claim that you have to put up evidence for. Since we don't have that, some people say they do, but most of us will probably not have evidence for that.
What if they say you are biased towards evidence?
Well, that is probably the only thing that works. If you're biased towards the evidence, that's always a good thing. That's always the aim of it. And another thing we need to be very aware of is logical fallacies. Now the thing is, a lot of people I see on Twitter, on YouTube channel, comment sections and everything, everybody's saying you're making a straw man fallacy, you're making a this fallacy, you're making that fallacy. That, it doesn't work that way. We have to be aware of the appeal to nature, where Ayurveda says everything is natural, it's good for you. They don't think about snake venom, they don't think about arsenic, they don't think about Botox from botulinum virus, which is all poisonous for you. There's the appeal to antiquity, which is, if it's ancient, it must be good. So Hinduism is the oldest religion, therefore must be good. But is that true? Again, not very true at all. All the mandirs we have, all the temples we have, ancient temples, beautifully made, lovely architecture, lovely designs. But does that make them any better than a church or a mosque? They are all places of religious worship. And that's what it is. And of course, again, Ayurveda, which comes back, it's an ancient medicine, therefore must be right, which is probably not. Of course, our argument from personal experience. We also make these arguments, even as atheists. We personally had this experience, therefore it must be right. But then it's no better than a religious person saying that I had this religious experience, I saw Krishna in my dream, I saw Shiva in my dream, I saw Jesus in my dream, and he spoke to me and he did this and he did that. And that is fine, it's a personal experience. We believe that you had some personal experience. But that is not an argument, that is not evidence from your own personal experience. That is your story.
Psychological belief.
Exactly. We have, our minds are all fallible. We make up things, we see things that are not there. We see rabbits in clouds. we see little puddles which make different shapes. You see lines which come on the static on the TV. Your brain makes all these things up. We are so susceptible to optical illusions. We are so susceptible to magic. We have magicians pulling rabbits out of hats and we'll believe it because we're like, oh, kaise kiya? But all of that shows us that our brains are weak and are not to be trusted. We need to find empirical, measurable evidence, and that should be the basis of all our arguments. And the most important fifth point that I wanted to bring about, which we can talk about later, is to have civilized discussions. The thing that we all, especially all us atheists, have in common is that when we first stop believing, we suddenly want to tell the world that we just stop believing, we're an atheist. Even the religious people have a joke for atheists saying that how do you know a person is an atheist? He will tell you. So that's why, but at that same point of time, we become very aggressive. Even I've made that mistake. I have a Christian sister-in-law who I used to debate about Jesus and her religion about. And I was quite aggressive and it hurt her feelings. And now when I look back, I feel bad about it. I shouldn't have done that. And the most important thing that you can do is be honest, be civilized, be open to their evidence, but don't be afraid to ask them questions. Lead them forward through questioning. And there are a couple of sources which are very good for this. I can only mention English sources, unfortunately. But it's very good. There's a YouTube channel and a podcast called Street Epistemology, which is done by this guy called Anthony Magnabosco. He actually goes out and talks to people on the streets in the US. He talks to people who are Muslim, who are Hindu, who believe in ghosts, who believe in magic, regular Christians, Presbyterian, all the other, he talks to anyone and everyone. He even talks to atheists and asks them about strange beliefs that they hold. And he just questions them.
Street what?
Street epistemology. Epistemology. Yeah. And there's another book called The Manual for Creating Atheists. This is not the first book I will recommend because we are all attracted to that name. Yes, that's true. That's why I read it first. But there is an even better, the second edition of that book, which is called How to Have Impossible Conversations, by a person called Peter Boghossian. And it is probably one of the best books to read when it comes to talking to people with strange belief systems, which are basically strange belief systems that we don't hold. And how we can question them, learn from them, have an honest, open conversation that is connected to them, that is respectful, that is civil, that is based on a common understanding. Whereas when we have a lot of conversations, we probably piss a lot of people off and they go running off and say, this guy, not talking to him again. But what we want to do is we want to have a conversation where even the person you're talking to will say, thank you, you have actually helped me question, made me think in a new way. I'll have to think about what you said. I'll get back to you. That is the aim of it. That's all I can fit into 5 minutes. I hope that thanks a lot. Thank you very much. Bagghossian. I think. There might be a single G or a double G. We'll have to check on that. But Peter Boghossian.
Could you post the main points and the channels and books on the group?
Absolutely. Will do. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.